moderated by Ritika.
Hi, I was just asking if we can begin. Thank you, Priyanka. We'll begin with the last session of the day now, which is on cybersecurity. And I would like to welcome our speakers for the same, Mr. Prasad and Mr. Singh. If both of you can switch on your videos, please. I will just introduce.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Prasad. So I'll just introduce both of you. We have Mr. Sanjay Prasad, who's Chief Information Officer, RPSG at CESC Power Group. His current focus areas are enterprise system management and governance interventions through digital technology and cybersecurity. He's worked as CIO at Tata Power as well, and in his earlier roles has also include primarily those of CIO and technology head and innovation enablement through the CTO's office in TCS and the business head for tech service units in TCS and Citigroup, with prior progressive stints in Colgate, Unilever, and Tata Motors, Unilever and Tata Motors. And we also have Mr. AKP Singh, who's Chief Engineer Information Technology at CEA, and he's also Chief Information Security Officer at the Ministry of Power. He's currently looking after the National Power Portal, cybersecurity, and working upon various committees and groups constituted for ensuring cybersecurity in the power sector. A very warm welcome to both of you, and it's a pleasure to have you both here. I would also encourage the participants to type in their questions after their remarks. Just would like to announce to both of you that we have over 100 participants logged in right now. And if you have any questions for the panelists, please do keep typing them and I'll take them at the end of the session. So I'll first begin with Mr. Singh. If Mr. Singh, you could first just throw some light on the concerns that are associated with data security and protection today for utilities, and the similar question that can then be answered by Mr. Prasad as well. So Mr. Singh first. Yeah.
Thank you. I would like to inform you that personally, every country has a right to protect the data generated within the country, actually, whether it is a power sector data, finance data. So that's why it becomes nowadays the buzzword is data sovereignty, actually. So we have to protect the data at any cost, actually, and because the data, if we have a correct data, authenticated data, we can build upon this data many systems which can leverage our economy. So data security has become more concerned today. But the thing is that how to ensure that the data collected is correct, authenticated, and the only way by which we can ensure that this data is ripe enough to be used for planning purpose and for the devising the schemes by ministries. So that way data sovereignty, data security becomes very much essential. So I am personally dealing with the National Power Portal whereby we are collecting all the power sector data. So in that our main concern is to collect data machine to machine, so that we want to have a authenticate data. There is no intervention in between in the form of human intervention also, or through any manipulation. So that way we want to provide a reliable, truthful source of data. So that one of the aspects I am looking after it. So I will keep on adding as I progress in my chat.
Yes, sure. I'll get to Mr. Prasad now. Sir, if you could just throw some light on what has been CESC's experience and what have been the broad lessons that you've learned so far. So please unmute yourself.
Yeah. Thank you, Ritika, for inviting me to the session, and it's a pleasure to share the platform with Singh Sahab. Although this is the last of the session and it's quite difficult after a heavy day's, attention to all the sessions, where I actually found the thread of cyber security ringing in all the technology talks that have happened so far. So I will respond, Ritika, to the first question, which you said you'll ask both of us, which is the concerns that we see. See, globally, last year about $6 trillion losses were reported due to cyber crimes. And we have all heard of cases like JBS Foods, Colonial Pipeline, Baltimore City attack, and of course a technology company like SolarWinds, on which many of our companies actually depend for managing and monitoring our network. Of course, historically, we all are aware of the classic case of Ukraine, where 3 discoms got affected. In fact, 30 substations of those 3 discoms got affected, and they touched upon several thousand consumers a few years back. So as we see, and especially with the pandemic year that followed last year, global threats and actors have multiplied several fold. Nation state actors in one case, which tend to cause socioeconomic dislocation, cyber criminals for short-term gains, and of course hacktivists, especially in the context of clean and green energy, to lodge their activism and protests. And of course, beside that, the classical insider threats. So proliferation of data, especially in the power sector, which is which used to be one of the 6 critical areas as far as India is concerned. Of course, the 7th one on healthcare got added last year. Data interconnectivity, sensorization, and increased attack surface of utilities have been, our breeding ground for such attacks. So when I say increased attack surface, I actually also refer to the physicality of it, where where a GTD expansive geography and its distributed management makes it all the more difficult to have a single process running across the entire chain. On top of that, with respect to crown jewels like SCADA and DCS, as well as challenges for internet-facing systems, which now also involve the consumer, besides the horizontal and vertical connectivity for IoT data, has increased the threat probability several fold. So while we all simplify today by saying that air gapping of the crown jewels like DCS and SCADA look to be a classical solution, but with today's expansion of increasing remote OEM support, increasing enterprise data flow, and of course, even despite the air gap, we still have people getting in with their USB and dongles inside protected areas, still make this a reality, the vulnerability a reality. On the people front, rising volumes of threats and alerts, and which matching with is difficult to be matched with the numbers in terms of both quality and quantity, because the talent pool is limited in the marketplace, and therefore it always becomes a catch-up game. While we will get into the next stage of looking at possible solutions and workarounds, there is of course one good thing that India in the last year's cybersecurity index globally has improved from the 49th position to the 10th position, which means that there is perceptible visibility of people trying to take action on the ground, both at the organizational as well as the governmental level. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Singh, I just wanted to understand from you, and maybe then after that, Mr. Prasad can also add, what are some of the emerging solutions for managing cybersecurity risks in your view? We have a lot of participants from the utilities. So what are some of the emerging solutions that you are seeing?
See, first of all, we would like to understand that whatever solutions we are going to provide, we are going to provide it from the perspective of the power sector protection, and which are mostly concerned with the IT as well as the OT. So the biggest threat is from the insider threat. So in fact, you all know that the data proliferation that takes place is mostly because of the insiders, risk control employees also. So what we can do is that we have to have a practice of background check of not only of our the visitors, of the vendors, employees, but our own employees itself. In fact, we are now suggesting in our CA regulation on cybersecurity empowered that any new employee, whosoever will be joining, first of all, his background check will be done and he has to sign an indemnity bond. This is some sort of bond actually, where he will be responsible for any data leakage or any damage to the system or threat arising because of his own desperate or knowingly or some actions that take place due to which some cyber attacks are successful. So that way, one way we have to check that all the employees are answerable to their actions, whereby threats are possible and the systems are getting exposed. So first aspect is this. Second, now the thing is that we always talk about the cyber security, but now the domain of physical security as well as cyber security now interrelated. Like suppose I have protected my system, but I don't have any physical security. So the best even cyber security will be of no use actually. So that way now we are talking about cyber physical security actually. So most of us are now very casual with the visitors actually. We allow them to visit our system. In fact, like one of the classic example of this firmware flash up is by placing a laser guide against any tools actually. So you don't know what sort of instrument your visitor is carrying actually until unless you visit him and check him physically. So that way, and moreover, he may be having a recording system placing nearby our system, and he may leave it, and that system may be communicating with the actors actually. That way, the entire process of the operation of the instrument may get captured actually. So the leakage, that is a way of capturing the vulnerability through the leakage actually. And this sort of physical security is also has to be now ensured. And now that's why now we are all talking about zero trust actually. So zero trust people, zero trust employees, zero trust equipments. These are the buzzwords. The third thing is that we are now operating mostly with the legacy systems. Legacy systems, they were not designed for the cyber security. So we cannot harden them to the maximum, to the fullest secured operation, but to the limited extent only. So now the biggest concern is to phase out these legacy systems. But the concern is that we Indians have a mentality that to make use of those systems as far as possible. So, but risking our own system at the cost of risking our system. So management has to be sensitized whether you want a safe system or you want to save some money actually. So when the cyber threat happens, the loss that has to be, the loss may happen, maybe running into crores of rupees or crores and crores of rupees, but the system replacement may be few lakhs of rupees. So that has to be seen by the management. Further, we are now operating a system which is having a life of almost 25-35 years actually, and the IT software which are now having a life of 7 to 10 years only, because the technology changes and that software also has to change. Like now Microsoft Windows, their support has ended, but still that system is running, and that the replacement of cost is huge because those new software and applications don't run on those systems. So once you change the system, you application has also to change actually. So that way now most of the OEMs are taking hands on these utilities, asking very unreasonable amounts of money for replacement of the old system actually, up to upgrade them for the latest version of application and latest updates So that way we have to have some sort of understanding when we sign the contracts. Actually, such things are going to happen in the future also. So that way we have to now fill the gaps in our contractual agreements, even if they are long term. But we have to be visionary actually. Other concern is though we have a provision of factory acceptance and site acceptance during when we make procurement, but we generally now for the cyber security there are these tests are very elusive. People are not aware what test has to be conducted, so they don't mention their cyber security requirement in their bids document. That way, that all the equipments that we are procuring, we are not knowing whether they are cyber secure or not. So the utilities now they have to be made aware what sort of security that they need should be documented in the bid document itself, and they should ensure that whatever they are procuring are safe from the cyber security point of view. So these are my concern actually, but there are many standards for which compliance can be sought, but there are no labs in the country who can really certify the compliance of this like IEC 20243 for software and 62443 for the OT products actually. But the thing is that we have to, the ecosystem is developing, we all have to come together and we have to raise our concern actually. The main thing is that any utility who is getting cyber affected won't tell that they have been hacked or attacked actually because of being shamed actually. But it is not it would be very disastrous and dangerous for our economy if you keep silent actually. Once we know that that something has happened, it may affect other utility and the damage can be more disastrous. So let us be very open if we get attacked actually, and that CERT-In should play a very active role in limiting the damages to the other utilities, so that the entire this attack scenario, the landscape should be analyzed, and for that the forensic expertise has to be developed in a country which is still lacking. Maybe finance sector has developed much because they are totally dealing with the IT software applications. So that way we can leverage their experience in our power sector also. The ecosystem has to be developed, which we are still lacking, and we are all working, and it will still take some time. But till that system is developed, we have to ensure whatever we can do, like we have to maintain our cyber hygiene. We have to be ISO 27001 certified. We have to get our system audited regularly. And in fact, once we get audited also, we have to plug the non-conformities also, because otherwise it's of no use. Further, we have to regularly do a BAPT testing of our system. So to check during the operation if some vulnerability has crept in, that way we can keep our system healthy all the time. It is my advice to all actually to regularly ensure that the system remains healthy, and even if they observe any minute abnormality, they should investigate it, and they should really talk to their OEMs and their industry experts for the measures to be taken actually. Any sabotage may happen, take a shape of a big cyber attack actually. So let's ensure our system. That's my submission.
Right. So, Mr. Singh, is there a separate test bed for cyber security in power under CEA?
In CEA, as such, we don't have cybersecurity test bed actually, but we are now developing cybersecurity test bed dedicated for power sector at CPRI Bangalore actually, and we are encouraging more industry people also. If they have any facility that can be leveraged for commercial purpose, they should come out with it. And we would like all the power sector utilities at least to have some sort of facility of cyber testing. There, people should be also capable of doing some tests actually. See, the thing is that once there is a fire in our house, what we do? We try to segregate that fire compartment. So that action has to be taken by the utility engineers itself. So they should be capable of isolating the affected system and keep running the remaining system and restore the system at the earliest. So that capability has to be developed. For that, some sort of whatever infrastructure has to develop, each utility should buy for it and should develop it. That's all.
Mr. Prasad, over to you now. So, what do you think are some of the best practices that you at CESC adopt to prevent such threats? What are some of the solutions that you are adopting?
So I would actually supplement all that Mr. Singh said so far, especially starting off with people. So I will try to segment my response in terms of people, and then talk a little about process and technology, and finally, the government and utility partnership that is taking shape as we speak. So obviously, in terms of people, it is important. I mean, training is key. Training not only for your IT security personnel, but also for users. And when I speak of it, I spoke of that we are in a catch-up game as far as the IT security personnel are concerned. So certification and making sure you have the right person in the right place, especially for the leader as well as the team, that is key. Mr. Singh talked about both IT and OT, and I would strongly endorse that IT and OT teams should not work in isolation, because they need to work in what is commonly known as cross-functional teams, and these cross-functional teams bring out the best of both in terms of the whole discipline of patch management and management of life cycles, which the IT team has some sort of an early advantage, and the OT team by virtue of the deep domain experience. So as was rightly mentioned, OT systems have a life cycle of almost 4 to 5x of that of IT systems. So thereby, the deep domain experience of OT personnel should be very critical as part of these CFTs. Also, most organizations tend not to give lip service to the performance of the CFTs once they are constituted. CFTs should have teeth with their own KRA and scorecard to be fulfilled and assessed at the end of each year. This will give an incentive to each team member to really see that it is their job at the end of the day to deliver as they're delivering on their own individual KRAs. Then lastly, I would add this point on the people side, mostly on this cyber physical convergence. I am absolutely, today when attackers look at a target, they look at a combination of both what they can do on the virtual world, as well as they can supplement it on the ground through the physical interventions. So while logical security is gaining prominence, physical access and boundary discipline need continuity of attention from each of us. So physical access to your sanctum sanctorums, which is essentially a DCS area or the control stations, are absolutely critical. So one needs to bifurcate one's geography into zoning, physical zoning, and make sure that you provide the right need to access to members who need to be there, either through biometrics or whatever form of strictest entry parameters that are applicable for an organization. Media like USBs have to be controlled, and any use of such laptops and media in those areas is only by exception, and it should not be once, but it should be reviewed maybe every 6 months, so that if that particular individual need not have access, maybe because he's got transferred, then he should not continue to have such access. So it's very important to focus on both the cyber and the physical aspects of security. Mr. Singh also touched upon the vendor side, and I would say that there are two parts. given the legacy nature of most of the assets, old contracts did not have security by design. So that needs absolutely, I'm fully in agreement that contractually they need to be plugged in. And secondly, once you have engaged with the vendor, SLAs should be very clear in terms of the type of remote support that is being provided by the personnel, because obviously we do understand that remote support has increased over the last, over the last 10 years or so, and it will continue to increase, but it should be governed by a strict SLA, and that access which is being done remotely as it was done during the lockdown situation, strictest measures should continue to run even when it is business as usual. Moving from people to process and technology, I would touch upon the nature of, the type of, especially for an integrated utility where, say, both generation and T&D exist. I would recommend having a CISO for one and another CISO for the other piece, and they should be alternate to each other. So not only there is continuity of what's happening on the G side versus T&D, but also they tend to back up each other in case of, in any emergency. So there is no lack of information that happens, sharing of information that does not happen if you have this CISO and alternate CISO concept in place. And moreover, classic legacy organizations tend to, derive the CISO function from the legacy IT infrastructure teams. So these CISOs should be independent of the IT infrastructure vertical, should be independent of the IT application vertical as well. And they should not only, CISOs should be of a certain degree of maturity and standing, so that they should be able to carry the team at an organizational level and be heard at any forum that where both from a discipline perspective as well as to facilitate any nature of interventions for any of the businesses. Also, when we are doing this updated asset inventory, the business impact analysis should be very clearly done, and this will actually help in the identification process, which we call as the CII process, the critical information infrastructure identification and assessment, which NCII PC today runs at a national level for utilities and 6 other areas. Mr. Singh spoke about doing periodic audits and VAPT assessments, and it's not an easy task to take that whole process of getting into an RFP and then doing that audit and following it up with a corrective action. So it is advised that this should not be done sequentially, and moreover, if you are a integrated utility, you could actually run this almost at a staggered level between G and T&D. So typically then you would be able to complete 2 such assessments in 1 fiscal year, which is what also the Ministry of Power sort of recommends doing it. And it's not an easy task. So a lot of planning along with execution is required to make this happen. On the technical side, we have to go beyond the classical antiviruses and classical signature or rule-based methodologies that exist today. And while AI and ML interventions that we have seen, including many products where neural networks methodologies have been introduced, it's a fad to have that implemented. And obviously there are good features in those products, but unless you do the configuration well, it is like running a white elephant. Because so it is very important that when you have those products, training is key, and configuration of those products is much more important than the product itself, so that then you would actually get the benefit of running it effectively at an organizational level. Also, we must take into account that while AI and ML supported features are coming in most of these security products, they are also being exploited by the perpetrators. So they are actually one step ahead in also trying to understand where the loopholes are. And instead of, earlier one used to sequentially see where the loopholes are from an attacker's perspective. They are now in a much more better position to also use the same technologies to their effect. Segmentation of IT and OT networks is we all know that it is critical. But with today's flow of information that happens between the OT network to the enterprise side, it is important that we only allow such data to flow one way from the OT side to the enterprise side, and make sure that it is not duplex information flow that happens. So this is between IT and OT. Now you come back also within the OT side, OT networks also need to be segmented. I'll give you an example. For instance, in a SCADA deployment, you would have a production segment, you would have a quality and training segment, and a testing segment. These segments within the SCADA network also need to be firewalled each from the other. And they need not be, very costly firewall equipment, but good firewall devices configured properly will give you the benefit that one would want even in such cases. And I think I would very strongly support the point that Mr. Singh made on knowing when to island your OT network should the IT network get compromised as part of any attack that may happen within the organization. Lastly, it is also important to think about, we don't normally do that, from what we should do in case of a recovery. Recovery involves informing the right folks, both within and outside the organization, the statutory agencies, and also ensuring that you have an incident analysis and forensics in place. Forensics is very costly for an individual organization today. So I would be very happy to support Mr. Singh to make this forensic effort as a service which could come both, not only it has to come essentially from obviously from the certain environment, and supported from the domain side as far as IT is, as far as power is concerned. And when any new project is starting, especially on the what we say that it's a digital project, be it cloud, be it IoT, or any other new IT/OT integration, the IT security personnel must be part of that team right from day one. Otherwise, what may happen is one may be able to come out with the right information dashboard, but later on when the whole system is tested, it may be flawed, and that system may actually be a blackout. So instead of that, and it unnecessarily brings up expectations on behalf of the management, because you have got access to a certain application arising out of a digital intervention. But if it is then blacked out at that later stage, the cost of that is far more than trying to fix it at the time when the application is being designed. So these are some of the aspects that one talks about on the people, process, and technology side within the organization. Now I would touch upon briefly on what progress we have seen, proactive progress we have seen on the government utility partnership, because this is also very important to sort of address it both at the organizational as well as at the national level. So we are aware of the sectoral certs that are in place, and actually Mr. Singh, as part of the ISAC which is Information Sharing and Analysis Center. He coordinates this entire exercise across the different sectoral certs, and we are seeing a lot of benefit coming out of this. So if one is a designated utility, I exactly don't know what exact definition of this, but it is largely pertaining to your major metros and key utilities that would be covered as part of a designated utility. One should take advantage and register for the Cyber Swachh Kendra, that is CSK subscription, which is running in its second year, I think it's second year now, which actually publishes suspected vulnerabilities several times in a month, and also presents a monthly situational awareness report. And this utilities should ensure that they are able to plug those gaps with urgency and with the right amount of management oversight, so that they don't remain open. And as of July end this year, out of 194 unique organizations that have been registered on this CSK, 41 pertain to thermal generation and 65 pertain to DISCOMs, because we are both a DISCOM and a generation facility. So I recollect this number. Then the National Cyber Coordination Center, as part of the Ministry of IT, has also come out with a threat support canvas, which is encouraging the designated utilities to also take part, by which metadata at the organizational level will be matched at the national level to make sure that any threat can be perceived externally and passed on to the organization if that is monitored by this team. And of course, one thing what I feel very reassuring is it is not the content of data that is being looked at, because organizations may have certain views, but it is the metadata which is going to be viewed, and more at a holistic level, and that's what I got to understand. Then one should take advantage of the audit that is being done through the certified list of empaneled assessors, which CERT-In publishes from time to time. And this also gives us the comfort that at some level, some validation has been done, apart from the entire validation that an organization does through its RFP process. So already this additional filter helps the organization to take one step forward in the whole assessment process. Lastly, in terms of NCIIPC, I have the good fortune of having interacted with them for several years. They have NCIIPC has now have empowered regional organizations, which actually brings the whole process closer to the utility in a much more collaborative atmosphere to do this identification of critical information infrastructure, and then get it assessed and ratified by the Power Ministry. So these are some of the good things that I have seen off late, which has come up with this government utility partnership. And I have maybe a couple of expectations that I would like to put forward, since Mr. Singh is there, and I believe we were expecting also a certain presentation in this panel, but I'm sure this can still get communicated.
So in the end, maybe you can share the suggestions with Mr. Singh.
No,
I'll just ask a couple of questions to Mr. Singh, and then we will go ahead with your suggestions.
Okay, great.
So, Mr. Singh, just a couple of questions which have come for you. What is the plan for implementation of MOP guidelines for cybersecurity in substation applications?
See, as far as the direction that we have received from Ministry of Power, we are now in the final phase of issuing the guidelines, CA guidelines for cybersecurity. That is, and it covers the entire power sector domain, the substation also, the transmission sector also, and the generation sector also. So it covers all. And subsequently, we will be releasing the notifying the regulations also, which will be a very exhaustive and elaborative, and that also covers the entire domain of the power sector. So in this, not only the people who are into the generation, transmission, distribution, but all those people who are in the field of trading exchanges and who are the OEMs, suppliers and vendors, they will be also covered actually. So that domain we have, we are shortly going to issue it. So guidelines will be issued by next 10 to 15 days. They have been finalized.
And sir, another question is, any key takeaways or lessons that CEA could learn from the Mumbai attacks that were there?
First of all, I would like to submit our view that this was not a cyber attack. So to say it as a cyber attack would be wrong actually. We would like to inform that we have been very proactive in analyzing such incidences from that angle also. So we have already taken up, we formed a committee, investigated it, and we found that there are no substances in this the media reports actually. So, but the thing is that we have suggested many proactive steps, like all the legacy systems has to be now phased out, so that cyber security hardening is ensured. Secondly, we have started very good information for all the peoples actually. We have started, we have mandated cyber security course for all the operators who are operating an IT and OT systems. So we have started the cyber security course for load dispatchers. We have already completed first batch from NPTI, and we are soon going to designate NPTI as the National Training Institute for conducting courses on cyber security for the IT and OT personnel. So, and we are making it mandatory for going this cyber security training. So that way we are trying to answer.
Great. Mr. Prasad, over to you now. In the last 3 or 4 minutes, if you would like to summarize your some of your recommendations for Mr. Singh.
No, I would take much lesser time than that. One is, this CERT-In. This is more for CERT-In. CERT-In actually has this good practice of coming back with this reviewed list of certified assessors who would look at audit of IT/OT systems, or in fact, for all the 7 critical sectors. There is one area where these critical sectors have a challenge, is sometimes one would like to engage, an ethical hacker to do a piece of work. So if CERT-In could come back with, and this, since it's an ethical hacker, it has to be done in a very secure manner with the organization that wants to do it, and it cannot have a publicized list of ethical hackers. So there should be a mechanism by which such ethical hackers could be certified in confidence, and the organization should be able to use their services, because there are ramifications of using such services. It should not get into a counter issue. So this is one area where probably a joint public-private partnership could help, number one. Number two is this entire partnership that has happened with, especially with the Ministry of IT, Ministry of Power, and the power utilities. One could also look at an escalation mechanism if one were falling short in reporting the plugging of the vulnerabilities or the advisories. And since a lot of information is getting captured by the sectoral certs as well as by CERT-In and CSK, maybe once in a while these escalations could come back to the organization saying that you are not, your reporting is not happening. It's not, it's a normal escalation as part of that reporting. So probably that could help instead of it blowing out of proportion at some point of time. So these are the 2 operational suggestions I had. And of course, lastly, one more, which I have seen on the telecom side, where there is a United Nations group of experts which actually publishes the list of certified vendors whom one could use. And I'm talking in the recent guidelines that we have seen with respect to CCTVs. So it could also apply to all other assets that a utility procures. So maybe one could come out with a white list of such vendors, which these designated utilities can then fall back upon, especially for not only assets, but also components of those assets, which may be of dubious origin. And I'm saying this again with my little knowledge of what I've seen in the telecom side. So that will help utilities a lot in also zeroing down on various RFPs when it is trying to procure assembly of components or very critical equipment for their facilities.
I would like to add on this. Just a minute. I would like to add on Mr. Prasad, what he has suggested actually. See, the telecom gear has now devised a process of identifying trusted sources and trusted products actually. And on similar lines for power sector also, we are in the final stage actually. And very soon we will be placing this system. And by in next 4 or 5 months, we will be identifying the trusted sources and trusted products. They will be covering the entire gamuts of the equipments that are being deployed in the power sector, and we are going to cover all the ICT-based devices, components, and products, even for the direct use or for the manufacturing use by the integrators in our country. So that way, we are going one step ahead by covering the entire OT system also. And we are there will be some equipments common with the telecom gear, so directly with those equipments will qualify as our trusted product and trusted sources. So that system will be in place. We have already had so many meetings with Ministry of Power, and that system will be short in place. That's all. That will be a very good event. And in fact, we are making. We have suggested that when the final bill for clearance will be put up by the finance department, that the bill should contain that the products are sourced from the trusted sources and trusted product. That will be also one of the criteria which will help us to make it a mandatory requirement for compliance for safety and security of our this power sector.
Thank you so much, Mr. Singh. This is welcome news. So.
On that note, then we will close the session on a positive note. Big thank you to both of you, Mr. Singh and Mr. Prasad, for a very, very informative session. And thank you for sharing your views and taking out time for this event. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So we'll close the session here and also the proceedings for today. And tomorrow we are going to begin, as I mentioned in the morning also, at 10 a.m. First with a recap by Powerline, and after that we will have the 3 tracks on transmission, distribution, and generation. So we begin at 10 tomorrow and we end at about 3:30. And we close for today now, and I wish you all a pleasant evening going ahead. And please log in on time tomorrow so that we can start the event on time and close it on time as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.